Whispers in the Woods, The Legend of Bigfoot, written by Lyle Blackburn. For generations, whispers have echoed through the towering forests of the Pacific Northwest. They speak of a creature, a behemoth hidden in the shadows. Bigfoot, a name that evokes both fear and fascination. Stories passed down through campfire tales and hushed conversations paint a picture of a being both powerful and elusive. Some dismiss it as mere folklore, a figment of overactive imaginations. But others, those who claim to have looked into its piercing eyes, know the truth. They carry the chilling memories of encounters that defy explanation, encounters that leave an indelible mark on the soul. These are their stories. Terror on the trail. A hiker's nightmare in the Olympic Mountains. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine needles as Daniel hiked deeper into the Olympic National Park. Each step he took seemed to echo in the vast, silent wilderness, the crunch of leaves and twigs underfoot the only sound breaking the stillness. The forest was alive with the subtle sounds of nature, yet it felt eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. The sun, already sinking towards the horizon, cast long, eerie shadows through the dense canopy above. The golden light filtered through the leaves, creating a mosaic of light and dark on the forest floor. It was beautiful, yet there was something unsettling about the way the shadows seemed to move and shift. He was alone, relishing the solitude that only nature could provide. The hustle and bustle of city life felt a million miles away, replaced by the serene, almost otherworldly quiet of the forest. Daniel had always found peace in these moments, but today, there was an undercurrent of unease that he couldn't shake. A sudden crack echoed through the stillness, stopping Daniel in his tracks. He froze, listening intently. The sound was sharp and unexpected, like a branch snapping underfoot. His senses were heightened, every rustle of leaves and distant bird call magnified in the silence. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat loud and insistent. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, his body preparing for fight or flight. The forest, which had seemed so welcoming just moments before, now felt like a living entity, watching and waiting. He told himself it was just a falling branch, a trick of the wind. He had been on countless hikes and knew the forest was full of sounds that could easily be misinterpreted. But the rational part of his mind was struggling to calm the primal fear that had taken hold. But deep down, a primal fear began to stir within him. It was an ancient, instinctual response, a warning that something was not right. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end and he felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm evening air. Then, he heard it again, a heavy thud, this time, closer. The sound was unmistakable, and it sent a jolt of fear through him. It was as if something large and heavy had moved, disturbing the forest floor. He slowly turned, his eyes scanning the undergrowth, searching for the source of the sound. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees and bushes forming a dense, impenetrable wall. His breath came in shallow gasps as he strained to see through the gathering gloom, and that's when he saw it. A shape, barely discernible in the fading light, moving among the trees. It was large, much larger than any animal he had ever encountered in these woods. A massive figure, silhouetted against the fading light, stood partially hidden behind a towering Douglas fir. Its form was indistinct, but there was no mistaking its size and presence. It seemed to blend into the shadows, a part of the forest itself. Its eyes, two glowing embers, seemed to pierce through the gathering darkness, fixing on Daniel with an unnerving intensity. They were unlike any eyes he had ever seen, filled with a malevolent intelligence that sent a wave of terror through him. He knew, in that moment, that he was not alone, and whatever was out there was watching him, waiting. Whispers across still waters, the camper and the shadowy figure. Location, Crater Lake, Oregon, 2022. The flames of the campfire danced in the twilight, casting a warm, inviting glow that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. The flickering shadows created an almost hypnotic effect, playing tricks on the eyes as they stretched and shrank across the shore of Crater Lake. Mark sat alone, mesmerized by the mesmerizing dance of light and shadow. The crackling of the fire was a comforting sound, a reminder of countless nights spent in this very spot. The air was still, the silence broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the wooden dock. It was a serene symphony that Mark had grown to love over the years. He had been coming to this secluded spot for years, finding solace in the tranquility of the lake and the surrounding wilderness. It was his escape, a place where he could leave the chaos of the world behind and reconnect with nature. But tonight, something felt different. The usual sense of peace was replaced by a growing unease that gnawed at the edges of his mind. An unsettling feeling, a prickling at the back of his neck, told him he was not alone. It was as if the very air around him had changed, charged with an unseen tension. A low growl, guttural and primal, echoed across the water, sending a chill down Mark's spine. It was a sound that didn't belong, a sound that spoke of ancient fears and hidden dangers. He slowly turned his head, his gaze sweeping the tree line across the lake. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a thunderous drum in the stillness of the night. At first, he saw nothing. The trees stood silent and unmoving, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. Then, he noticed it. A dark shape, moving silently among the trees on the opposite shore. It was almost as if the shadows themselves had come to life, slipping between the trunks with an eerie fluidity. It was large, much larger than any animal he had ever seen in these woods. Its size alone was enough to set his nerves on edge, but there was something else, something more disturbing. It moved with an unnatural grace, its long arms swinging rhythmically by its side. Each step it took was deliberate, almost calculated, as if it were stalking something or someone. As it stepped out from the cover of the trees, the firelight glinted off a pair of eyes that burned with an eerie yellow light. Those eyes seemed to pierce the darkness, locking onto Mark with an intensity that made his blood run cold. Mark's hand trembled as he reached for his flashlight, the small beam of light his only defense against the encroaching darkness. He fumbled with the switch, his fingers clumsy with fear. The flashlight's beam cut through the night, illuminating the trees and the dark figure that stood among them. For a moment, the creature seemed to hesitate, its glowing eyes narrowing as if assessing the threat. Mark's face was illuminated by the flashlight, his expression a mix of fear and determination. He knew he had to stay calm, to think clearly, but the primal part of his brain was screaming at him to run. Slowly, the creature began to retreat, melting back into the shadows from whence it came. Mark watched it go, his heart still pounding, his breath coming in ragged gasps. As the last traces of the dark figure disappeared into the night, Mark lowered the flashlight, a wave of relief washing over him. But the unease lingered, a reminder that the wilderness held secrets he might never fully understand. He turned back to the campfire, its flames now burning low. Staring into the embers, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just glimpsed something ancient and unknowable, a shadowy figure that would haunt his dreams for nights to come. The night sky was filled with stars, each one a distant beacon in the vast expanse of the universe. As Mark sat by the dying fire, he felt a profound sense of mystery, a reminder of how small and fragile humanity truly is in the face of the unknown. As dawn approached, Mark began to pack up his campsite, the events of the night still fresh in his mind. He knew he would return to Crater Lake, drawn by its beauty and its secrets, but he would never forget the shadowy figure that had watched him from the darkness. With one last look back at the campsite, Mark walked away, the first light of day breaking over the horizon. The lake and its mysteries would be waiting for him, a silent witness to the strange and the unknown. Location: Crescent City, California, year 2000. The headlights of the car cut through the darkness, illuminating the winding road ahead as it snaked its way through the towering redwoods of Northern California. The trees stood like ancient sentinels, their massive trunks disappearing into the night sky, creating an almost otherworldly atmosphere. The road was narrow and winding, with sharp turns that seemed to come out of nowhere, making the drive both thrilling and a bit nerve-wracking. Inside, Jake, Emily, and Ben were driving back from a weekend camping trip, the mood light and filled with laughter. They had spent the last few days hiking, fishing, and sharing stories around the campfire, creating memories that would last a lifetime. The car was filled with the scent of pine and the remnants of their campfire meals, a comforting reminder of their adventure. As they rounded a bend, Jake slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. The sudden jolt threw them forward in their seats, and the sound of screeching tires echoed through the forest. The laughter died instantly, replaced by a tense silence as they tried to understand what had just happened. Standing in the middle of the road, bathed in the harsh glare of the headlights, was a creature that seemed to defy description. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a bizarre and terrifying figure that seemed to have stepped out of a nightmare. The creature's presence was both mesmerizing and horrifying, holding them captive in their seats. It was enormous, easily over 8 feet tall. Its sheer size was intimidating, dwarfing the car and its occupants. The creature moved with a strange, almost fluid grace, its limbs long and sinewy, giving it an eerie, otherworldly appearance. Covered in thick, matted hair that ranged in color from dark brown to black, the hair was tangled and dirty, giving the creature a wild, untamed look. It seemed to blend into the shadows of the forest, making it difficult to discern where the creature ended and the darkness began. Its eyes, two glowing orbs, stared back at them with an unnerving intelligence. The eyes seemed to pierce through the darkness, locking onto the car and its occupants with a predatory gaze. There was something almost human in those eyes, a glimmer of awareness that made the creature even more terrifying. A low growl rumbled from its chest, shaking the very air around them. The sound was deep and guttural, resonating through the car and sending chills down their spines. It was a sound that spoke of danger, a primal warning that they were in the presence of something truly dangerous. Terror gripped the occupants of the car. They were frozen in place, their minds struggling to process the impossible sight before them. The fear was palpable, a heavy weight that pressed down on them, making it difficult to breathe. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, her body ready to flee from the danger that loomed before them. Ben, his face pale, could only stare in disbelief. His mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation for what he was seeing, but there was none. The creature defied all reason, a living nightmare that had stepped into their reality. Jake, his pulse racing, threw the car into reverse, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white with tension. He knew they had to get away, but the fear made it difficult to think clearly. "Ben, what the hell was that?" His voice was shaky, filled with a mix of fear and disbelief. He turned to Jake, hoping for some kind of answer, but knowing there was none. "Jake, I don't know, but we need to get out of here. Now!" His voice was urgent, the fear evident in every word. He pressed down on the gas pedal, the car lurching backward as they tried to put as much distance between themselves and the creature as possible. The forest seemed to close in around them, the darkness pressing in from all sides as they sped away, their hearts pounding in their chests. These are but a few of the countless encounters reported each year. Each tale, unique in its details, adds another layer to the legend of Bigfoot. The creature remains elusive, a phantom of the forest. Is it a real creature, a missing link in our evolutionary chain? Or is it something more, something we cannot hope to understand with our limited human perception? The truth, like the creature itself, remains shrouded in mystery. But one thing is certain, something lurks in the shadows of the Pacific Northwest. Something that continues to haunt the dreams of those who dare to venture too far into its domain. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more Bigfoot True Stories.